In the United States, the rush toward progress often pushes the past into obscurity. But in the empty streets of abandoned towns, in silent prisons, and in dried-up amusement parks, echoes of history still resonate. These are not just ruins. They are narratives carved into the landscape that show collapse, resilience, and the weight of human choices. Some places fell victim to disasters that were ignored until it was too late. Others simply outlived the resources that gave them life. Some were overpowered by the force of nature, and some collapsed because of flawed human ideas. Together, they form a map of forgotten America, each site revealing a different path to abandonment. Centralia was once a modest but active town in Pennsylvania's coal country. In May of 1962, a small fire was lit in a landfill as part of routine cleanup. What seemed like an ordinary act of municipal housekeeping turned into something catastrophic. The flames slipped into old mine shafts beneath the town and ignited vast seams of coal underground. At first, few people realized the danger. Local officials tried to fight the fire but lacked the resources. Federal experts proposed solutions, but they were considered too expensive. Year after year, the fire spread beneath the surface, invisible yet devastating. Cracks appeared in the ground, steam rose into the air, and carbon monoxide seeped into homes. The scale of the threat became clear through disturbing events. In 1979, a gas station owner discovered that underground tanks of fuel had become dangerously hot. In 1981, a 12-year-old boy suddenly fell into a sinkhole nearly 150 feet deep that opened in his backyard. He was saved, but the incident made national headlines and finally forced broader action. By 1984, Congress approved $42 million to relocate residents. Most families accepted buyouts and left. Houses were demolished, schools and churches closed, and whole neighborhoods disappeared. In 1990, only about 60 people remained. By the 2010 census, that number had dropped to 10, and by 2020, only 5 residents were officially recorded. Centralia today is no longer a functioning town. Its streets are cracked and overgrown. Route 61, once a highway through the area, became famous as the Graffiti Highway before being buried under dirt to discourage visitors. The underground fire still burns, and experts estimate it could continue for centuries. Centralia is a reminder of how a small problem, when ignored, can grow into an irreversible disaster that erases an entire community. If Centralia illustrates the danger of neglect, Bodie tells the story of prosperity that could not last. Located high in California's Sierra Nevada, Bodie began as a small mining camp after prospector Waterman S. Bodie discovered gold in 1859. For nearly 2 decades, it remained a quiet settlement of a few miners. Everything changed in 1876 when a rich deposit of ore was discovered. By 1879, Bodie's population had exploded to between 7,000 and 10,000 people. The once small camp was transformed into a booming city with more than 2,000 buildings. Saloons, hotels, general stores, boarding houses, and a thriving red light district filled the streets. Reports suggest there were more than 60 saloons operating at the town's peak. Violence, robbery, and lawlessness became so common that Bodie developed a notorious reputation. The prosperity proved fragile. By 1880, the ore supply had begun to decline. Miners and their families started leaving for other opportunities. Fires struck the town in 1892 and again in 1932, destroying many of the remaining structures. By the early 20th century, Bodie was already being described as a ghost town. By the 1940s, it was essentially deserted. In 1962, California designated Bodie a state historic park. Instead of restoring the town, officials chose a policy of arrested decay, preserving the buildings exactly as they had been left. Today, visitors can see a schoolhouse where desks and books remain in place, a saloon where bottles still sit on the counter, and a church where pews remain arranged as if waiting for a congregation that will never arrive. Bodie is more than a tourist attraction. It is a frozen record of the boom and bust cycle that shaped the American West. Where Centralia was undone by fire beneath the earth, Bodie was undone by the fading of gold within it. Both show how the foundations of a community can vanish, whether suddenly or slowly. From the fading of a gold town, the story shifts to a very different kind of place. Six Flags New Orleans was built not on industry or resources, but on entertainment. Opening in 2000 as Jazzland, the park was acquired by Six Flags in 2002 and reopened under its new name in April 2003. It was designed to bring fun and thrill rides to families in Louisiana. For a few years, the park thrived. Roller coasters, shows, and games attracted large crowds. But on August 29, 2005, Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans. The park sat on low land near a canal. When the levees failed, floodwaters rushed in. About 6 feet of water covered the grounds, with some areas between 4 and 7 feet. Salt water lingered for over a month, corroding every ride, destroying all electrical systems, and weakening foundations. The damage was too extensive to repair. Six Flags abandoned the property. The rides rusted, weeds grew across the grounds, and the once lively park became silent. Parking lots that had once been filled with cars sat empty. The site, visible from nearby highways, became a constant reminder of the storm's destruction. For years, the abandoned park drew urban explorers and filmmakers. Movies such as Jurassic World and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes used the eerie landscape as a backdrop. But for residents of New Orleans, it symbolized both tragedy and frustration. Redevelopment proposals came and went without result. Demolition work, long delayed, finally began in late 2023 and continued into 2024. 62 structures were targeted, including the park's largest roller coasters. Developers announced plans for a major project known as Bayou Phoenix, a $500 million investment including hotels, a water park, sports facilities, and film studios. While the future remains uncertain, the long-abandoned park is finally disappearing, piece by piece. Where Bodie declined slowly and Centralia burned invisibly, Six Flags New Orleans was undone in a single catastrophic season. It shows how quickly nature can erase human effort and how long the scars of disaster can linger. Our final story is not about a town or a park, but about an institution built on a bold idea. Eastern State Penitentiary opened in Philadelphia in 1829. It was the first true penitentiary, a prison intended to reform rather than simply punish. Its designers believed that solitary confinement would lead prisoners to reflect on their crimes and repent. The prison's architecture was revolutionary. It was laid out like a wheel, with a central hub and cell blocks radiating outward. This allowed a small number of guards to oversee many prisoners. Each cell was designed for isolation, with a skylight known as the Eye of God, plumbing, central heat, and a small exercise yard. Prisoners ate alone, worked alone, and were forbidden to speak to others. When taken out of their cells, they wore hoods so they could not see or be seen. This strict system influenced more than 300 prisons around the world. But the theory soon collided with reality. Isolation often broke prisoners mentally rather than reforming them. Some experienced hallucinations, others suffered breakdowns, and critics began to question whether the system was humane. Eastern State operated for 142 years. During that time, it housed thousands of inmates, including notorious figures like Al Capone, who in the late 1920s occupied a cell furnished with a radio, a desk, and comfortable chairs. By the mid-20th century, however, the prison was outdated and too expensive to maintain. It closed in 1971. For 2 decades, the massive structure sat abandoned. Roofs collapsed, walls crumbled, and vegetation spread through the cell blocks. In the 1990s, it was reopened as a museum and historic site. Today, it is open to the public, serving as both a reminder of prison history and as one of Philadelphia's most visited landmarks. Its reputation as a haunted site also attracts many visitors who come seeking unexplained sounds, voices, and footsteps in the empty corridors. Eastern State's story differs from the others. It was not destroyed by fire, drained of its resource, or washed away by a storm. It collapsed under the weight of an idea that proved unsustainable. Centralia, Bodie, Six Flags, New Orleans, and Eastern State Penitentiary are 4 places with different stories but a shared outcome. Each was abandoned, each left behind as a warning. Centralia shows the danger of letting small problems fester until they become overwhelming. Bodie shows the fleeting nature of resource-driven prosperity. Six Flags. New Orleans shows how natural disaster can wipe away years of effort in a moment. Eastern states shows the human cost of flawed social experiments. What unites them is that they remain, even in ruin. Cracked streets, silent saloons, rusting roller coasters, and crumbling prison walls all stand as reminders. They tell us that progress is never permanent. Communities, businesses, and institutions can vanish if their foundations are weak. America's forgotten places are not simply curiosities. They are living lessons in history. They show us that the past is never entirely gone. It lingers in the empty spaces we leave behind, waiting for us to listen.